recall that on every occasion that we've had the discussion about the extension, while I have always supported, this side has always supported, the call for extension of zone of special, the extension of ZOZOs were always supported on this side, always, always. The record will show. Yes, the record will show ZOZO has always been supported. In fact, the question was certainly coming from me and others. When will this be expanded elsewhere to other constituencies? Always. No, please. No, shut your mouth. Yeah? 5 term and more upon you. Look, the Prime Minister, the question remains. The minister has always recognized, whenever we spoke, he'd start by saying, yes, there's a need, but there are constraints. The question is, within the context of the resources now available, will there be an expansion, a measured expansion of the ZOZO, as we recognize that the balance of security and community development was always there. We recognize that, and we supported it from day one. Prime Minister, when might we see some orderly expansion of the zones? These have been in place for many, many years. They are proven their worth beyond any doubt, and the question remains, when will that be expanded?
Member from Portland Eastern.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Prime Minister, I also rise to give my overwhelming support to the extension of the zones of special operation. I just have a few comments to make. One, in terms of the reduction of crime, I'm sure the House can appreciate that the X factor would be a remarkable uptick in extrajudicial killings. I'm not seeing where in any of the reports anything that can quantify or justify the reduction outside of that. So on a human rights plane, one has to consider whether or not, when we're talking about restoration of human dignity in some spaces, whether or not the lack of use of body cameras, also the idea that extrajudicial killing certainly this year has been significantly increased, police fatal killings as another way people understand it to do it, whether or not this is one of the reasons where persons will apprehend fear and feel that their human rights are under attack, especially when you have families complaining that the persons who were killed, whether it was targeted or not, is actually one of the reasons why we have a reduction and is actually bringing fear. So that is something to think about. Zones of special operations, there is a call for other communities, and given its success, one wonders if a build out and moving to another space would not have been more effective in terms of crime reduction. It never was meant to be a stopgap. And Mr. Prime Minister, infrastructure is not a marker of changing the human aspect of a community. It is actually whether or not, when we look at, for instance, in one of these spaces, a smart bus stop for $4.7 million, if that is what is envisioned in terms of uplifting the morale of a community and changing the criminal aspects. So in terms of community empowerment, what we want to change is social behavior and actually have persons within the community feel a sense of pride and feel a sense of upliftment in the spaces, not No, except for the fact that one wonders if the if the extension is not given. I'm hearing myself respectfully. If the extension is not given, Mr. Prime Minister, the fear is we will regress into a situation where all the work would have been to naught because the persons in the actual community, there's no evidence that's saying that the lives of the persons are being uplifted, but rather there is regulation in space that borders constitutionality. And so I'm asking you to consider, as we continue to say, I support what is being done, but whether these reports will be a little bit more targeted in saying that that these markers are being met, and again, whether there are timelines for exiting a particular community and intervention starting in other communities. That's the best. And then attribution for reduction, Mr. Prime Minister. It's important that for public knowledge, that we have exact statistics or insights as to the attribution for reduction that can be credited to the zones. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, members, for your participation. Let me start with the member from Portland Eastern. In terms of attributions, we are ourselves contemplating a study to be done on the zones of special operations. It has been in operations now heading into almost 8 years, and I believe it is time for an empirical review to be done, and we have started along that lines already. So we will have a review done, an empirical study done on the zones of special operations, and that will give us more information as to how we can improve this strategy. The member mentioned increase in police killings, was also alluded to by the member from St. Catherine South. And I will say this: the police force has become far more effective in doing its job. I can say with great confidence that the JCF and the JDF have mainstreamed and internalized human rights training. It is part of their doctrine. It is part of their leadership culture. And they do try, as far as they can, to protect lives, including the lives of criminals. I hear a great deal of talk about the increase in the number of police killings. And I too have my own concerns about this, because I don't want it to ever be said that, our police force is the most lethal. That's not the kind of police force that we are trying to create. But I believe that on the other side of the ledger, on the other side of the argument, we must also be concerned about the propensity of criminals to challenge the police. I don't hear anyone saying, why are these criminals shooting at the police? Why, when they are stopped, why, when they are interdicted, they decide to challenge the police? As I have said earlier, we have invested heavily in our police force to make them more effective. And the Jamaican state must never be at threat or at risk of criminals. If criminals challenge the state, they must not win. Our police officers must go home to their families safely. So, whilst we do have our concerns, and we have put systems in place, both internally at the leadership level, we support INDECOM and its own operations. We encourage the internal review and use of force policy in the JCF. When we meet in the National Security Council, these are matters that are discussed because we want our police force to, more than anything else, serve, protect, and preserve life. This is also a message to the criminals. Save your life, don't challenge the police. So I'm hopeful that I have put that to bed. There is, Mr. Speaker, some duplicity in the arguments presented by the opposition. First, there is a call for more technology. Where are the cameras? Both body-worn and closed-circuit cameras, Jamaica Eye. We need the greater use of technology to improve security in public spaces and improve the outcomes of interactions between the police and the citizens. And I support this fully. And to reassure the member from St. Catherine South that just, in Cabinet 2 weeks ago, we approved a major procurement of over 1,000 body-worn cameras. And this is just one in a series of such procurements to come for more cameras. So it is underway. And just to be clear to the public, there sometimes seems to be the view that you can go into a store and just pick up a camera and stick it onto the police chest. Please, these matters are, I don't want to use the term sophisticated because by now the technology is fairly standard, but it requires an ecosystem for it to work. So it's not just cameras, it is also storage, archival for retrieval. It has to be up to a certain standard that what is stored reaches evidentiary levels. There has to be a system of how these cameras are maintained should there be failure. And then there is the whole business of putting in place the fiber optic connections, because where you download physically the footage is not where you're going to store it. So it has to be transmitted, and you have to make sure that you have that connection. So there's a lot to be built out before you can deploy body-worn cameras. And I'm assuring the public that the build-out is taking place, and we have signed off on a procurement for 1,000 body-worn cameras, which is not the final amount. They will procure in batches. And so the JCF will have body-worn cameras sufficient for its members to ensure that there is transparency and accountability in the police-citizen interaction. But on the other hand, there is a reservation that somehow investing in smart technology or infrastructure will not transform the lives of citizens. The member from Eastern Portland, the thesis of his argument is that the transformation of the man does not depend on the environment in which he is. The transformation of the man is that, allow me to make my point, as I allowed all of you to make yours. The thesis is that the program should focus on the human element of the problem, improving the man, rather than focusing on infrastructure. That's the thesis of the argument. Now, Madam Speaker, it is not just a philosophical point. It is absolutely important to policy. Yes, for there to be a genuine change in how the person behaves, there has to be focus on programs that seek to change the mind. Improve behavior. No argument with that. But I encourage a member to consider that there are persons in the zones of special operation and right across our society where there has been no special investment in any program to improve their behavior or reward good behavior. They behave according to the standards and laws and expectations of the society simply because they are good citizens. Simply because they are good citizens. And this is what we miss in the debate about social transformation. We never seek to acknowledge and reward the youngster who lives in the harshest inner city community but never felt the need to take up a gun to prove his manhood. Never felt the need to join a gang. It is time that government policy shifts to supporting people who obey the law. Now, Madam Speaker, in every society, there will be persons who are deviants. And the only way to treat with deviance is to have the enforcement of the law. There are some people who we will have to support them emotionally, psychologically, yes. But we cannot compromise the enforcement of the law, and more importantly, the building out of the infrastructure that ensures that where crime is committed, it is detected, and the perpetrators brought to justice. And that is what the zones of special operations is about. We are going into communities. We are breaking up the ecosystem of criminality. We are putting in place the infrastructure to ensure that there can be enforcement. And we are also putting in place the social intervention that will ensure that no one can have an excuse to say it is because of my social marginalization why I am in crime. And to also ensure that those people, though socially marginalized, who have not gotten involved in crime, that they are also supported. That is what the zone of special operations is. So, Madam Speaker, the member from St. Andrew Western, I consider him my brother and neighbor. His point, unlike my sister from Success. We are all one family in St. Andrew. Madam Speaker, the member from St. Andrew Western asked, so if the program has worked so well, why not expand it to other communities? And as I stand here and I ask members, tell me a community where murders are increasing year on year. In your constituency, Tony? You are standing on a point of order? Clarification.
Not necessarily.
Member from St. Andrew Western.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's not simply about as we speak, part of the challenge we're having is the amount of the more times when the police intervene to close off social programs, parties, and other things that people, because they are shooting in the neighborhoods. And that happens certain frequently. I'm not talking about the number of that crime is spiraling out of control. It's just happening sufficiently that it feels like suppression is taking place.
What the member is clarifying. But the bill, the resolution that we are debating is on the zone of special operation. The zone of special operation has a threshold, a trigger for which the measures can be applied. And one of the triggers would be that there is an increasing number of murders in a community. And one of the reasons why we haven't put in more zones is because we no longer have communities that meet that trigger threshold. Now, if members reflect on this, this is a major change from 2016 when we started to contemplate and actually implemented the zones of operation in 2017. Because then, Madam Speaker, we identified 20 communities in which we would have to implement zones of special operation. 20 communities. To the point where the member from St. Andrew South, after he came on board, because he only recalled from St. Catherine South, he only recalled when, there was agreement. But there was a time, especially when the bill was being debated, and the member from St. James West Central can tell you that there was significant opposition to the bill. But good sense prevailed. And when the effectiveness of the program was manifest, the member, because when he was speaking, I went online and looked for some of the reports. And there's a report of the member asking for more money to be given to the zones of special operations. So, Madam Speaker, why was this necessary? Because the program was so successful that everyone agreed they would like to get a zone of special operations. We didn't have enough money to expand the program. But, Madam Speaker, the programs, the zones that have been implemented have worked so well that they have had an impact on other communities. So there is no question, Madam Speaker, that the zones of special operations have worked so well to the point where we cannot now identify a community that requires a zone of special operation. A major transformation of the criminal landscape in Jamaica. The member from South St. Catherine also pointed out, falsely so, that the states of public emergency did not result in a reduction in crime. Again, bringing a falsehood onto the national platform. That is absolutely not true. I am not calling the member a liar. I am merely saying what he said was not true. Between 2018 and 2019, when the first SOE was declared in St. James, murders declined by 70%. In fact, every year that we have used the SOEs, murders have declined. In 2020, the former leader of the opposition and myself agreed that that being an election year, we would not seek the extension of the SOEs. Without the extension of the SOEs, murders began to rise again. These are the facts. So, again, as I've said, Madam Speaker, I am going to make it a point of duty to dispel all the falsehoods that are being placed in the public domain. The member, again, from St. Catherine South, asks that special attention be given to the communities that are under zones of special operation impacted by Hurricane Melissa. And the answer is yes. In fact, we are going to be focusing on them through the Jamaica Social Investment Fund. And in the reconstruction phase, they will get the special attention that they need. There are actually 3 communities that would be impacted. It would be Mount Salem, Norwood, and South. Now, the question would be, I believe I've answered all the questions. So, but
Member Russell, you had something?
The question about, I dealt with your question on the attribution, which would be stakeholder feedback. So we're going to do a study. We're going to do an academic study on the Zozo to see how well it works, and that will take into consideration the feedback of stakeholders. So, Madam Speaker, it is my great pleasure to have participated in this debate. I think it was very meaningful in elevating the national conversation and providing information to the public. May it please you, Madam Speaker, so I therefore move the motion be accepted and the 7 zones of special operations be affirmed or approved.
Thank you. The question is that the motions, we have several of the ZOZOs, notice of which the Prime Minister gave earlier, all be approved. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. Thank you, members. House Leader.
So, Madam Speaker, it is not intended to do any further business today. Just to say that we do expect that this will be the final sitting before Christmas. We will break and return in January unless there's an urgent and pressing matter. So I would want to take the opportunity to wish you, Madam Speaker, and members of the House and the team headed by the clerk all the best for the Yuletide season and for them to keep safe. On a more soft note, Madam Speaker, I just wanted to use this opportunity just to note the passing of Mr. Lenworth Fulton, who served as president of the Jamaica Agricultural Society for a number of years and also served in government as the executive director of RADA, other agencies like the Jamaica 4-H. Most of us would know him and have come to know him as a strong advocate for farmers and a champion for the rural economy, and we wish our deepest condolences to his family. Just to remind members, as you have indicated, that next week even though there will be no Parliament, we intend to use next week, Tuesday, to have a presentation from the Integrity Commission, which is very important in light of the fact that there is a requirement for statutory declarations to be filed by the 31st of December, especially it's for requirement for all of us, and I would urge all of us to come and engage with the new leadership of the Integrity Commission. With that said, may Parliament be adjourned for a date to be fixed.